I think that is foolish. Free trade, they said, so. They saw who I supported in the past, okay? Patrick Buchanan. He's been a prophetic man in what's happened to this nation. And if you haven't read him before, I think you go get The Great Betrayal, you get Day of Reckoning, and you're going to see the truth in what he is writing. He has been. And everybody's been mocking him for many years. And I'm used to being mocked, okay? Back in the ERI days. So, what's the problem with Club for Growth and my policy on being opposed to unfair trade practices? They think it's a good idea. When I said 9% of our debt is owned by China, they said that's healthy. Why? Because China will have the best interest of our country at heart. And I want to ask you, my friends who've been around longer than some of the younger ones, who can remember, since when has a communist country ever had the free world's interest at heart? Never. We have lost our leverage with that nation that is dumping on us at such a rate. You know, one of Ronald Reagan's top advisors called me up not long ago. He lives in Idaho. He had an apple orchard. He said, please tell the people in Utah that a year before China started dumping on our market their apples, I had a thriving business. Within that year, my business was gone. Now, my opponents, where's my back? My opponents will say that, well, if we just take away all the regulations and EPA, OSHA, whatever else, corporate taxes, we'll be just fine, and then we can compete. I want to tell you, those numbers are not going to lie, and I'm not going to let that happen to our nation under, as long as I would have anything to say about it. Here, and we're going to blow this up, but here's what we look like right now. This is our debt structure. This is Japan. Japan owns us more than any other nation. Next is China. Did I say Japan?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't know what's wrong, but anyway, this is China. This is Japan. Okay? And we are in debt to all these other nations. We're even in debt to Malaysia. So, this is a serious state that we are in as a nation. We're a debtor nation now. And we got ourselves here through, in part, our free trade practices. The trade debt is $7 trillion debt. But this is debt. This is not just trade. This is everything. And total, it's like $800,000 billion. Okay.
So then, how would you regulate trade? On what principle or what basis would you determine what goods and services can be traded with the U.S.?
I would certainly not do the way we are doing right now, which means allow China to be dumping on our market at rates that we can't compete with. Ronald Reagan had a good plan when he was president. He said that the United States should be trade partners, but not trade patsies. We become the trade patsies. And here's some figures right now. If we took away all of those regulations, everything that I was just talking about, OSHA, EPA, and so forth, and if we even increase the value of China's currency by 40% on a particular comparison here of a product, it would cost the United States $68.61 versus China's $21. Now, does anyone think that's a good plan for our country?
What product are you referring to?
It was arbitrarily saying for a product that would cost $100, then it's just making the comparisons. We're going to put this chart up on our website as well.
So then if I understand what you're saying is it costs us because we're so bogged down in bureaucracy and all these extra things that the federal government is forcing us to do. If you were to get rid of all that, what would have cost $100 now only costs
60. We got rid of all of those things.
It would still cost
Plus corporate
60-something
taxes.
bucks.
It would still cost us $68.61 to produce the same item that China can produce for $21.
Okay.
And it's not just China, it's all the other countries that we are allowing to dump on our market as well. So the question is, how do we solve the problem? Well, here's an example. When Reagan was president, Harley-Davidson was struggling because, guess what? Japan was dumping all of its great motorcycles on our market. So he did what is called a protectionist approach, and he attached a tariff to those Japanese products. Well, it made those products more expensive to buy than Harley-Davidson. It saved Harley-Davidson. Harley-Davidson makes a great product. I've never been on one, but I understand they're good. Anyway, so is there anything wrong with doing that? For those of you who have been through college and have taken economics courses in the past 25 years, you were taught a lie. I'm sorry. Our founders created this nation based on this protective policy. Every nation in history that ever rose to prominence in the world and economic stability followed that kind of protective policy. And I will share with you, back in 1846, England was very prominent in the world. So were the European nations. They got rid of their corn laws, which were their tariffs, right, on their agricultural products. And in 2 years, 1848, here is Karl Marx giving a speech to the Democratic Association of Brussels. And I've read the whole thing, and here's what he concludes. Generally speaking, the protective system in these days is conservative. In other words, protectionism, this evil word. While the free trade system works destructively. It breaks up old nationalities and carries the antagonism of the proletariat and bourgeoisie to the uttermost point. Now I'm going to translate that, because if you've ever read Marx and Engels, it's really boring. It means that our free trade policy is putting our nation, the haves, against all the nations of the world, the have-nots, into conflict with each other, and requiring us to redistribute the wealth and hasten the social revolution globally at our expense. In a word, he says, the free trade system hastens the social revolution. In this revolutionary sense alone, gentlemen, I am in favor of free trade. And that is the policy that we in this nation have been pursuing. And if you wonder why we have Barack Obama in office right now, and a whole Congress, Republicans and Democrats, who have been supporting this policy, and why we are suddenly looking at becoming a socialist nation on the world stage, then you can see what the source is. I'm just going to conclude on that topic with one final point. We have a great example of what's going on. In the World Trade Organization, we have 153 nations that belong to it. Every nation, whether it's the United States or Madagascar, gets one vote. If you look at our Constitution, that is not how we do it in this nation. We get one vote. They are overriding the United States the majority of the time in what would be the best for our nation. An example, 2006, our Congress voted to prohibit internet gambling. The WTO, in retaliation and in a punitive way, voted to override our intellectual property, and they allowed the piracy of that property into 2 Caribbean nations. Is anyone concerned about the sovereignty of our Constitution and our nation on the world stage? I don't know that the others in this race understand this issue. Otherwise, they would not be on board with free trade. And that's a critical issue, what's going on with our nation right now. Okay? Other questions? Yes.
Not long ago, you said the word entitlement. There's probably